Hey everybody, welcome back to Work in Progress with Reno Collective. This is the weekly live show from Reno Collective about work, life, and everything in between. And it is our 30th Twitch anniversary, our 30th episode. So
Yes.
I'm Colin.
And I'm Rachel. Yeah, it's our 30th Twitch anniversary and our YouTube anniversary.
Yeah, YouTube
Yeah.
anniversary.
Well,
I
30th.
think
Yeah.
yeah, we've got some other YouTube videos out there, but
Hmm.
this is mostly in a row, concerted, no stopping. We haven't.
Yeah.
The tricky
I
thing with podcasts is something called pod fading, where most people get excited and they start their show and they do a few episodes and then they're like, I'll skip a week, I'll skip 2 weeks. And then
hmm
eventually they just, it's 6 months later and they haven't been doing their show.
Well, and we've had a couple of times where it's Wednesday morning and the show.
That's
What is our
tonight.
topic going to be? What are we talking about?
Yeah. So we learned a lot, and that's what we're talking about today. This was your idea, so you want to share what
Yeah.
the topic is and
So it's a little bit of a poke at tradition, but the idea is that traditionally on the 30th episode, on the 30th wedding anniversary, the gift is pearls. I have no idea why. And so the idea came to me that we were about to hit our 30th, and I wanted to do something for our 25th, but it kind of sailed right by us. So it ended up being today, and it was pearls, and obviously pearls of wisdom, we have so much to share. So that was the idea behind it. And then of course the idea that, or just the notion that people like to share advice and they like to give advice. At least I tend to be I like to solve people's problems through giving advice, and I fall into that trap quite a bit.
yeah, I think you started it off asking people what the best advice they've received that they never asked for,
Mm-hmm.
which can be taken both positively and negatively.
Right.
So we can share a couple of those, but I think there's a few other categories we can look at. We can poke fun at. We've poked fun at a little bit about gurus and things like that in past episodes, so we can kind of
Mm-hmm.
talk about that. Obviously, everyone likes to try to pass their what they've learned, their experiences, and things like that. Some people are not so great at that when telling people to smile and stuff like that. But
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So hey
Exactly.
Zach, and anyone who's tuning in on YouTube and Twitch, if there's any advice, whether it's the good kind, the bad kind, the kind that you never asked for, and you want to share it with us, definitely post it in the chat. Um, but I'm just looking up real quick. It looks like the 25th gift was sterling silver. I think that would have been hard to
Oh.
come up with a topic for.
Silver
Um,
linings. What do you mean hard to come up with a topic?
Silver State.
Silver
Um,
State.
the modern, so this site has the traditional and then the modern version. So for
Yes.
30,
Yes.
it's pearl, and the modern version is diamond because it's
Whoa.
long lasting endurance. So I
Yeah.
think that's good for us.
That's
Um,
interesting. Yeah, I would have
and
expected that would be like traditional. What might be a diamond just because people, well, maybe, well,
people
okay,
value
people
diamonds. Yeah,
marry longer or shorter now. They live longer.
they live longer. Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, if you haven't seen these before, it's kind of fun too because YouTube does this with subscriber points. So, like when you hit 1,000, I think it's actually 100,000. So if you hit 100,000, probably 500,000, a million different
Oh.
subscriber levels, they send you the YouTube play button, and the first one I think is a silver play button. Then there's a gold one. Then
Oh.
there's a diamond one, and then I think somebody has like the 10 million or 20 million, which is like the platinum
Yeah.
ruby.
Encrusted
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, and they're more coveted in that they're that color. They're not actually made of diamonds, but
Oh.
they're very fancy, and there's only a few of them that exist in the world, and they have
Right.
craftsmen that work for Google/YouTube that make them and send them out. So I think a lot of YouTubers got a lot more views during the pandemic and last year, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
a lot more play
Exactly.
buttons have been being shipped out. So
I think I have one of those like What are those? The staples button, the easy button. I think I have one of those laying around somewhere. That's
We
about
can
as
just
close as I'm getting.
frame that, and that's our Arena Collective play button.
Done.
So yeah, let's start off. I mean, some of these are going to be practical things. Some of these are going to be for fun.
Yep.
But some of the things that we had shared with us, I think this one I'll let you share the first one. That's a pretty common one.
Oh yeah. Well, you always so parenting advice. There's always someone just waiting to give you advice. When it comes from parents, it's one thing, and it's generally taken with, a little bit of salt just because you figure, oh, my baby is unique or I am unique. And so therefore not all advice fits. And then rapidly soon after you realize, yeah, actually a lot of advice does fit. Situations where it involves children that most of the time someone else has experienced exactly what you're experiencing. But it's when you get advice from non-parents that is incredibly helpful. Things like, well, you should sleep when the baby sleeps. That sounds awesome. It's like someone saying, just smile. Or smile. You should smile more, honey. Like, yeah, that'll make the day better.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Yeah. I think every parent knows they should sleep when the baby sleeps. I do not know a single parent that ever managed to sleep when the baby slept. So for all of you parents or parents to be out there, keep it in mind.
Yeah, I'm not even going to touch that one. John just posted this one on Twitch. Don't squat with your spurs on. He hasn't had an occasion to heed the advice, but for all you cowboys out there in Nevada, don't squat with your spurs on.
That is useful advice. That's very useful advice.
One of our longtime friends of the show, friends of the collective, Chelsea, she shared a story where someone, I guess, I don't know if this was out the car window or...
His car window.
Yeah.
Was driving by.
A woman shouted out to her that you shouldn't be riding your bike alone. Where are your parents? And she was 26 years old. So there's that.
Granted, she is smaller, but come on.
Yeah. I assume she was probably riding her bike, or I think she's up in Seattle now. I don't know if this was in Seattle or San Francisco, but yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot
advice
of
that was not asked for sure.
Well, and it's also advice where if someone gives you advice on your hair, or you're standing in line and someone makes gives you advice on, oh, you'd look good in this or that, when you really haven't asked, like physical appearance type stuff. Or, sometimes it comes in the form of like a backhanded compliment, I guess, kind of like that Southern way of like, oh, bless your heart, which really means like,
well, is there a right way to do it? Because I mean, this wasn't intentionally sent to us, but someone actually posted something this week where they were at like a driving range and someone came up to them and started critiquing and offering legitimate advice, like whipped out like a golf book and like really wanted to see them like be better. No. Like, is there a right way to do that? To me, I was like, if this was the wrong person doing it to the wrong, like, depends on who the two people are, I think.
Yeah.
And what the context is and how you approach it. And, but it to me, I could see, I mean, like, this guy was basically mansplaining to this, in this case, it was a woman golfing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Then but there's that.
There's that. But I mean, he genuinely, I mean, how many people are holding on, like, have this like golf Bible in their back pocket, ready to teach people? Or are they running around the golf course just looking for people to try? Like, is that their thing? Like, we could talk about that, in terms of like, what is their goal there? But
yeah, who was that guy? The Kevin Costner character? Was it Bill Durham? No, Bull Durham. I know, but there was one where he was a golf pro. But yeah, exactly. I don't know. When is it acceptable? I feel like it's more acceptable when you ask for advice.
Yeah, and we see that too. I think we've seen that in like our different programs that we did at the collective, where sometimes we will share things that we're working on or going through. And I think a lot of people, especially like independent workers, entrepreneurs, we like to fix things, and so everyone jumps into problem solving mode, and you should do this, and you don't know. I think it's like all the things that you don't know what a person's life is like and what they've tried and what they haven't tried, and then the little bit that you do know. So it's hard to know, like, and I think that might be the right thing, is maybe you ask.
Right.
If it hasn't been asked for, then before you give your unsolicited advice, that you just ask if they're open to
Right, exactly.
suggestions.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very hard for me not to give unsolicited advice when I've had that communication. So if we've started a conversation, someone has an issue,
Yeah.
then I want to try and help. And I might know one little thing that might be able to work, or I might know a person who might be able to help you with that. But sometimes it's just stopping and listening so that you actually hear what the person needs.
Yeah.
And
And that
we've
need
been
might just be
practicing
them
that.
sharing it. They
Right,
might not
right.
want you to fix it. And this has become a how to be a good listener.
You're right. Yeah.
Because sometimes it's just they just need to talk through it, and they might come up with a solution, or just expressing it was enough, and that doesn't need to be fixed in some cases.
Well, exactly. But I think that is actually great advice, is to be a good listener. And we've been working on that with our motivational accountability groups, which we do here at the collective. We call it codivation, which is why I said motivation. But the way it's set is to, obviously everyone, well, right now we're on Zoom, is to allow everyone to give their sort of a review of their week, a breakdown of what they're working on, and then the chance to ask for what they need.
Yeah.
Because it was always, in the past, we had it was much more reliant on, all right, here's my little presentation, how my week went and what I'm doing. Now give me everything you got. And it was like a round table of advice. Yeah, exactly. And not that we didn't take certain things away from there, but how many productivity programs or apps are you going to actually, that you should actually look up versus, am I needing a productivity app, or perhaps all I'm asking for is just an audience right now?
Yeah.
But it makes the speaker also think a little more about what they need.
Well, and this is a little bit meta, but the moment that someone starts to talk about the problem that they have, I notice this in myself, and other people do this too. You jump into problem solving mode, and now you're not thinking about what they're saying anymore. And now it's become about you again, and how, like, oh, I got the perfect answer for you, just gonna fix it. They may have already tried it. Maybe it doesn't make sense for them for a number of reasons. We found people love things like writing on paper versus using a time tracker. And some people, no time tracker is going to be the right time tracker for them. They have to use paper. And so your mileage is going to vary with all these things. And that's some other good advice right there.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I've got to jump in and add another piece, Colin. So it's funny because, I was reading, there's a book called, I think it's called You're Not Listening. And it's a book about the power and the act of listening, and how we actually should do it. Not how we should do it, how to improve our ability to listen, and what is actually listening versus trying to step ahead, right? So the phrase in the book is stop thinking, or don't be thinking when you should be listening. And I found, we're doing an online course, and one of the students said, I shouldn't have been typing, I should have been reading. And I forget exactly how she said it. But so now I have both of those quotes sort of sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
So that I'm not, as I'm reading someone's response or someone's post that I need to respond to, instead of just reading a couple sentences and then hurriedly going down into the response box and starting to write out my response, and I'm typing, instead of just reading the full thing, ingesting it, like kind of how we learned in school, which was read the full story, then answer the questions.
Right.
Don't just jump ahead. Because your brain can't do both things at once, is what this book is talking about. You can't think ahead and listen at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, doing these types of, even this call, like, I notice more, like, every time I look down, and this is a weird format where we're not in the same place, and then the camera is up here, the keyboard is down here, there's things on my desk that I'm playing with, and so, like, but does that mean I'm listening, or is it just like is it something that I would have been doing in the physical space with a pen, and it wouldn't have meant that I wasn't listening. Um,
Right.
it's something that I have done this a few times, and this has to do with listening, and it made me realize that like I maybe wasn't listening to the main person, but sometimes, and I don't try to do this, but sometimes when there's multiple conversations going on in the same room or the same place, I hear both of them
Hmm.
at the same time, and I will sometimes respond to the other one while listening to the first one.
Yeah.
And this happened a few times, and it probably makes me it's probably offensive to the person that you're actively trying to listen to, if not done right. Like there was no reason for me to
Yeah.
respond to the thing behind me, but it was also like the moment it was when Chanel recognized that it had happened. More that she was more impressed that I could even understand what things were happening. And it's not something to aspire to. I think definitely listen, be in
Hmm.
one place, one time. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, like work from home over the last year has taught all of us a lot of different things, and so there's a lot of advice on how to look your best on the Zoom calls and like how you should be breaking
Right.
up your time and all of that. So one of the
Right.
things that we got something that we can all probably sympathize with a little bit was a piece of advice: don't type anything that you'd be afraid to go to the wrong person or the wrong chat.
Hmm.
Statistically, it's bound to happen at least once. So this is probably from
Hmm.
personal experience. I think we saw in the early days of the pandemic, we saw a lot of Zoom mishaps as well. Uh,
Oh.
very similar problem, right? So we've learned some of those are very practical, but like, what are some of the other things that we've learned from a year of work from home? The good, the bad, the ugly.
Oh boy. Um, well, I think one of the things I've learned is how to manage, well, for me, I guess like manage technology, but also like how to manage things in a smaller space.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're supposed to keep your distance from people. You have your bubble and you've got to make things work. And sometimes it's at home. Like I have to make my desk work so that I can do all of my schoolwork on it, or I have to make this space work that I'm at right now. I was laughing with Colin before the show about how I'm sitting here and I have all this technology, except I don't know in like perfectly how to use it. so so I've kind of like scraped together a way to make it work so that I look okay on camera and it works out for the show. But in reality, I'm sitting on one chair, straddling a stool with a microphone down below, a standing desk propped up so that my camera is higher than my eyes, with a light in one side and another light on the other side, but I have to make sure that the light bulbs match. And I did not know any of that stuff beforehand. Um, but it's like flexibility and sort of, I don't know, I guess kind of like letting go of the way things are supposed to be. Maybe that's a better way of saying it
Yeah.
is I should be in this space where the two of us are talking and we have our own microphones. We're across a table from each other so we can read body language a little bit more. We're sharing a space versus us being so apart. So it's like, okay, just have to be a little less uptight about things,
Yeah.
I guess.
But at the same time, we've learned a lot from even just doing this video stuff like that. Some of our rooms are awful for video.
Right,
And so, like,
right.
when we start to think about return to work, like, video calls are still going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Remote work's going to be very much a thing. Like, how do we make that easy so that you don't have to, like, show every member, like, how to look best on their camera, or, like, they'll go into a room and be afraid to turn the lights on and stuff like that. Because I think
Right.
the video is probably not as important as the audio. That's what I've learned over the last year is that people will sit through bad video, but people really will not sit through bad audio. And if you guys
Good
listened
point.
in the early days, I mean, we were learning, and I mean, I used to get very nervous because I've got like multiple computers running lots of different software to just put out this very simple thing that we have. And there's productions that are much more complex than this, but now I can launch all this in 10 minutes. I know it's going to look good. I
Mm-hmm.
know it's going to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
But that takes time, and like that 30 30 episodes is what it takes. For
Yep.
YouTubers, I think it's like you can't complain that you're not getting views until you've hit like 52 videos. It's like statistically, you're gonna do it for a really long time,
Yeah.
and you almost, I think some people argue you don't want to be really popular in the beginning because
Right.
you need 52 videos to look bad and to get better and to look better, make better videos, make better content. It's not just about what it looks like, but it's the subject of it, the content of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And our show isn't, we evolved it from trying, I think we were trying to teach a lot,
Yeah.
and now we're trying
Yep.
just to kind of riff on topics and just kind of have fun with where it goes. So we don't
Yeah.
really even, I mean, looking at our show notes now, like they're not fully formed. Like today, we're going to teach you how to be productive. Like that, you can go find that stuff out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
This is
exactly.
just a little bit of water cooler that
Yeah.
we don't
Yeah,
get to have.
exactly. Well, and that's an interesting, if you, going back to your original point about when do you offer advice? So we have a couple of rooms that are ideal in theory for video conferencing,
Mm-hmm.
but could use a little bit of like some of the light we have to work with, or the person who's doing it needs to work with. Giving the advice as far as, what, like clothing, like today I was like, oh, I'm really washed out in this shirt. I was like, God, I forgot today was the show. Otherwise I would have worn darker shirts. So like I've learned those things just because I can see myself on my screen. I know there's a way I can turn it off, but I have never figured it out. So anyway, so I don't want to look at myself on the screen all washed out. But things like try this light or use this angle, I almost feel like that's part of the to-do list that should be posted up in the room. So even though it's like unsolicited advice, right?
Yeah.
It's also like you really ought to do it this way if you want to make it look good. But
Yeah, and there's a few ways to do that, right? It's one thing to tell them how to do it, and another thing to
yes,
like, here are some tools for you to learn and play with. Some
yes,
of them might not work for everybody, right? Some people may not ever use camera. I know there's some companies where cameras are off by default, and like only the
maybe.
presenter's on camera, which I don't even know what that person's offering by being on camera if everyone else is. But yeah, not having like you must do these things to have a good video, but like here's a warmer light, here's a cooler light, here's some props, here's some stuff for the background, and
Yeah.
we're not going to set them up for you. They're just here if you want to use them, and I think that's like a subtle suggestion.
What? And all of those, I just kind of realized all those, like, I don't even know what they're going to be. They're not like the much later millennials turning into the Y-lennial or something. I don't know
You mean
whatever it's
after
going to be.
millennials? Yeah.
Yeah. So the ones that are all about Instagram and selfies, they've actually been training this whole time to do this. Whereas like you don't need to know how to do a lot of that when you're in person, because you lose a lot of those things. I mean, this is me. I can't walk around with a selfie stick and a glow light or whatever. But they've been training this whole time as to how to be on screen. Like the only interaction to have with humans is on screen. And so all these Instagrammers were like, damn it, they were ahead of the curve.
And some of them, they're not as worried about what it looks like. So there's some people who really focus on how good it looks. There's a lot of people who just don't have, like, we grew up not on screen like this. And so, even though we had computers for our, age range, but we weren't always on video, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they just are used to being on video all the time. Whereas I think most people, like, I don't even like to be on the phone. Like, but this is much better than being on the phone, because usually the phone calls, it's either a scammer or someone wants something and it should have been an email, stuff like that. So I don't know, but
well, I think as we, we're always in a constant, we're always learning as a space, but as humans as well. Something that came across my inbox recently was another space, and I think it's in New York. And there's a lot more diversity as far as the people who are using the space. And they had an interesting point about the types of paint, the types of reflections that can be that can be utilized for all different like skin tones even,
Hmm.
where how light bounces off of different skin tones. And I mean, there's so much that goes back into technology and some of the like institutionalized racism that's happening in there, because it was white males that developed it, and then we're
It's
trying to
being
like, what was it?
designed and yeah,
Yeah, like
everything.
PlayStation, it wouldn't recognize an African American face, I think was the thing.
Yeah.
So taking those ideas into consideration, like, is a white wall better? And this one was a gray, so that the way that you lit it for a cool light versus a warm light worked better for different skin tones. And it was really, I was like, yeah, I guess I hadn't thought that.
Well, and I mean, even
Surviving.
the people on camera may not know that, right? And so, how do
Right.
you help people help themselves with
Mm-hmm.
that?
Yes.
This is very much not where I thought we were going to go with this, but
I mean,
it was, it
it's still
was,
advice.
yeah, no, it's a good advice. Like, how do you help people be successful and like guide them down a path? And a
Mhm.
lot of it is, I think sandboxes, whether it's literal sandbox, like being able to like paper prototype something if you're working on something, or a sandbox literally meaning like a box of a bunch of tools. So it's like play around with these, see which one you like. Some people might make something really artistic.
Mm.
You have like some more of like an art noir type like
Uh-huh.
video versus something. You wouldn't do that for Zoom, but you might be a videographer or a filmmaker, and you might want to play with that. And like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really cool things you can do with light and different diffusers and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna find what you like working with. And I think everyone also develops a style. So like, if we want to talk about video, it doesn't make sense for Zoom to be super produced, but if you go on Twitch and you go on YouTube, you'll see everyone kind of has their own aesthetic, their own style.
Yeah.
And if you go watch their early videos, that's the best thing to do. Just go watch. So they're on iPhones. They're not using the
Mhm.
high-end gear. And I'd say the
Mhm.
last piece of advice as we wrap up here is that you don't need all the gear to get started, right? So a lot of people wait to have high-end cameras before they start photography. You can
Right.
do that with an iPhone.
Right. Yeah.
Um,
The Blair Witch Project. I still haven't actually seen that movie, but the whole point behind it, like, you can have a handheld and make a really good film, apparently.
yeah. Or you got monster movies shot on Super 8s and stuff
Right.
like that too. And
Right. Exactly.
good old shaky cam footage.
Oh,
But that's teaching
man.
you how to focus on storytelling and all these other things versus relying on the tool. And part of that with the YouTube metaphor of lots of episodes is that as a YouTuber or a Twitch, anything that you're making, you can't only put out your best stuff. And so like,
Right.
someone was talking about being a writer or a painter, like, you can't say like, well, I'm only going to make my masterpiece. You're going to make a lot of shit before you make the masterpiece. And
Yeah.
a lot of people are going to see it. Probably a lot of people aren't going to see it because you're not known for it yet. And then when you have your quote unquote masterpiece, then people will start paying attention, but they're probably not going to go back and, they'll have a different perspective on that other stuff you worked on and all of that.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
those actually
absolutely.
in the art world, those are probably worth more than the good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like those very first
The first
sketches
Picasso.
like Picasso's sketch on the napkin is like $2 million. And
And it could be an NFT today, though.
That's
true.
true.
That's what it's all
That's
about.
true. Oh, our very first episode could one day sell for billions.
Yeah, we're gonna release this episode as an NFT. So if you're out there, you want to own this episode, you can get the rights to it.
It's yours.
So awesome. So that's episode 30.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got for next week? Still, we'll
Something
figure it out.
really good.
Something really cool.
Yeah. Here's another piece of advice: be prepared. That is always...
No, we can make that one up as we go.
Boy Scouts. Oh no, I've got the topic. Well, it should be a lovely week. Here we go. Oh, yes. So we're actually talking about, well, things change, but right now we're looking at trip planning. So like we were talking about vacation planning and how it has changed, and like even camping, booking the second that the 6 minute or the 6 minute, the 6 month mark has hit, like midnight on the 6 month mark before you want to go camping, you better be at that computer. So trip planning, vaccines, and hashtags, because our world is surrounded and infiltrated by hashtags.
We'll talk about some octopus.
Yep.
Yep.
I don't know what that is yet.
Awesome.
But by then, I'll have had my first vaccine by then too.
Very cool. Yeah, I just had my first one today. So
yeah. Happy first vaccine day, Colin.
We're getting there. If you haven't gotten one yet, get out there and get an appointment.
Yeah. We're in Nevada, so Nevada opened up 2 days ago, the 5th, for everyone, so you can sign up. And yeah, I think at some point, and maybe what we'll do is collect some information on people's feedback and their thoughts about the vaccine and open up that can of worms.
Nice. Yes.
Or not.
Where can people find Reno Collective and the show?
You can find us everywhere. So you can find us online, renocollective.com. And there you can learn more about us, the co-working space located here in Reno. But you can also find the show YouTube and Twitch, depending where you're watching it now. But we're also on all the socials, most of the socials that count.
I think we're over 50%. I know YouTube's, it's hard to get to 100, but we're going to get there.
I know, we are so close.
So if you're not a subscriber on YouTube, hop over there.
Yes, and we'll have our own name on YouTube versus
it's crazy.
XY77384 gobbledygook.
Yeah, there's Arena Collective in the Philippines, and I don't know what they do. The more I've looked at it,
was a band,
and I think it's like a fashion brand or something. It's very strange, but we get Google alerts for it on occasion, and I'm like, what are we doing in Asia right now? And hopefully they're not listening right now, because I don't want them to get the YouTube handle before us. So
okay, the race is on.
we can do it. So
yeah,
awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Right. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. Yes, we will see you next week. Bye.